First of all, welcome to my first bake and discussion for Maddie's Baking Book Club. I'm so excited that you are here. The first book for January is Arsenic and Adobo, so I chose some inspiration from the book to create a macaron today. As you can see here, I'm starting off with a regular macaron shell. I've got two spatulas, and one of them I'm actually using the bottom of because I was inspired by some Thumbprint cookies in the book and I wanted to macaronify them. So I am just starting off with a very normal macaron shell, room temperature egg whites. I'm going to stream in my sugar and cream of tartar. Then I'm going to whip that up to a really nice stiff peak before transferring it to a bigger bowl and adding in my dry ingredients. I am not adding any colorant into this. There's no color, there's no flavor, none of that. This is going to be a Pandan Coconut Thumbprint Cookie macaron. After I get all the ingredients incorporated for these macaron shells, I am going to pipe regular circles, but then I'm going back to that spatula you saw, and I'm also going to use some unsweetened shredded coconut, and I'm going to try to make these look like coconut thumbprint cookies. In the story, Arsenic and Adobo, there are a lot of scenes revolving around food, and there were so many things that inspired me, but I really felt kinship with the main character when there were a bunch of people coming over to her apartment, and it was like unexpectedly a large number of people and some random people that she didn't know as well, and she was like, oh, no big deal, I'll do something quick. And so she just like makes like thumbprint cookies and whatever, and in her mind she's like, you know, kind of we're hearing her voice this, that like, no big deal, I'll just have to make something simple and basic because I don't have enough time. And I just love that about her, that like to a lot of people making coconut pandan thumbprint cookies would have been like something very special to bring, but to her it was like, I don't have time for anything fancier, so let me just make this. And yeah, I just love that because hello, it's me. So as you can see here, I'm just piping very normal looking macaron shells, and I could just sprinkle coconut on these and call it a day. I have made thumbprint inspired cookies before just by having regular circles and then using royal icing later, but I really wanted to go all out and just see, can I make these look like and feel like as much thumbprint cookies as possible. So on half of the shells, after tapping the tray, I'm sprinkling the coconut over the entire shell, and on the other half, I'm really just kind of aiming for the outside. I probably could have just gone for the whole thing, but after I give these time to form a skin, I'm going to go in with the spatula, the metal-bottomed spatula, and I'm going to press a divot into the center. So I waited like basically the whole entire time I had been resting these shells, a minimum of 10 minutes. I think I did 15. And then I just gently tapped down so that I could create this little well so that later I can have a place for my pandan royal icing to go. I only did this on half of the shells. Again, you can still create a thumbprint style look without doing this, but I just wanted to play around with this. It was very fun to do. It felt really wrong, and I was kind of expecting that the inside little divot might get really weird and explosive in the oven, but honestly, it turned out perfectly. So yes, thumbprint cookie macaron shells success. If you want to try to replicate this in your home kitchen, I highly recommend it. It worked out really well. So there we go into the oven. The coconut does toast up a little bit, so you end up getting some nice color even though you don't really start off with anything. Then after those are baked, I'm going to get right into some royal icing. I'm just creating a relatively kind of not runny, but pipeable, very easily pipeable consistency, adding some pandan extract into some royal icing. If you've never made royal icing before, I do have some tutorials for royal icing for beginners and some kind of ways to decorate with that. I ended up doing a couple different things here with the royal icing. I did some of it this solid green, and I wasn't really in love with that after piping a few. I mean, it was like kind of there, but it was a little bit too pastel for me. And so I actually then took it out of the piping bag, swirled in some more of the extract, or you could add in some extra colorant or something. And then some of the other ones that you'll see in a second have more colorant because I added more extract in them. So now these fully finished macaron shells, I'm going to give them a chance to just, completely dry out that royal icing, because we do have a really nice bulb of royal icing going there now. So that's just going to sit on my counter completely to dry while I work on the filling. So because I was trying to mimic a cookie from this book that was a Pandan Coconut cookie, I wanted not only the appearance but the taste to just scream Pandan Coconut. So I decided to go for a cookie dough, replacing some of the original flour with toasted shredded coconut. So into the oven that goes to toast. Meanwhile, I am also going to get some flour that I'll be using for the cookie dough in there. Always heat treat your flour if you are making an edible raw cookie dough. Then I'm going to let those cool off before I move on to making the rest of the dough. It is just like any other cookie dough you've ever made. Dry ingredients can go into a bowl, cream some butter and sugar. I'm using both regular granulated sugar and some brown sugar with my butter, which is unsalted and room temperature, of course. Then after that's nice and good and creamed, I'm adding in a bit of coconut milk and vanilla, followed by all of those dry ingredients. Because this is an edible raw cookie dough, this is the end of the road for this guy. If you are not going to be using it to fill your macarons right away, you can stick it into your refrigerator. You might want to ball it up into little bits, or you can just leave it in a giant blob, whatever works for you. Then the very last element, I am going to use pandan extract and vanilla paste to flavor and color some vanilla buttercream. I just had a vanilla Italian meringue buttercream on hand, so that's what I'll be using. You can use whatever your favorite recipe is. I am going to be using the buttercream to create a ring around the outside of the cookie dough that's resting in the center of the macarons. So you're really ending up with the pandan from the royal icing, the pandan in the buttercream, the coconut on the macaron shells, and the coconut in the cookie dough. And of course, it looks like a thumbprint cookie, and then you've got that cookie dough inside. So not to completely pat myself on the back here, but I'm pretty sure I nailed it. I was so happy with how this turned out, and I'm pretty sure that Lila would have been happy with this as well. Again, I was really inspired. There were so many things in this book that I really wanted to try to make, and not even just relating to this book club idea, but just in general. There were so many things as I was reading that I was like, oh, I could try this. Oh, I could try this. Oh, I could eat this. It was a very fun read for that reason. After I get all of the buttercream piped around the cookie dough, I'm just going to sandwich these and get them into my fridge for at least 24 hours. Again, I'm making sure that the royal icing is completely hardened and dried before I get it in there. Otherwise, these will mature completely normally, just like any other macaron would. Okay, seriously, these macarons were so delicious. I really hope you try it out, even if you don't go for the full thumbprint effect, the Pandan Coconut cookie dough. To die for. Now, as I mentioned, there were so many other things I wanted to try that I couldn't wrap up this video without also making a calamansi honey ginger tea that Leela kept talking about. I do not think that this is a technically speaking accurate recipe, but it was so delicious. Again, just like blew me away. So here I've got some water in my saucepan. I am adding honey to that directly. This is a pretty thick honey. I think you can use whatever honey you want. And because it's just a beverage, there's nothing wrong with that. Then I have a little bit of ginger here. I'm just gonna take the outside off of that and slice it into just some nice little kind of medallions and get that into the pot as well. Again, in this book, Arsenic and Adobo, we see the characters coming together at the restaurant, at Leela and her auntie's house, at all these other restaurants. Like, they're constantly gathering and eating, and I just love that so much. I love eating out with people. I love having people over to my home, and this is a beverage I will definitely be serving to guests in the future. It was really tasty. So for this one, I am kind of creating like a ginger honey tea here on the stove. I'm bringing this to a pretty good simmer, and then after I've been simmering this for 5-ish minutes, I'm taking it off the heat, and once it's off the heat, I'm adding in my black tea to steep for about 5 minutes as well. If you are simmering that with the black tea in there, you can run the risk of having a bitter, kind of a much stronger tea, so I do recommend doing that off the heat, then strain it, let it cool completely before mixing in the calamansi and the tea over some ice, and there you go. It was so refreshing and delicious. I absolutely loved it. I believe you could drink this hot as well, and it would be incredible. But in the book, Leela mentioned it being an iced tea several times, so I really wanted to make her version. Please stay tuned. Coming up next, I'm going to be talking with my friend Amber, getting into a deeper book discussion about Arsenic and Adobo. Thank you so much for being here throughout this baking portion. If you give these recipes a try, as always, make sure to tag me on Instagram at Maddie Brame. I'd love to see your results, especially baking and book related as well. If you want to participate in Maddie's Baking Book Club, or if you want to check out what anybody else created, make sure to head over to Instagram and post, or just search the hashtag Maddie's Baking Book Club. All right, on to the discussion. Hi, Amber.
Hi, Maddie.
Thanks for being here with me. It's so nice to.
It's my pleasure.
So
I feel honored.
Well, thank you for being here. And as you can maybe see as viewers, our time difference is a little bit, it's very much nighttime in Minnesota. Amber, tell us about you. Who are you? Where are you? How do we know each other?
Yeah, so right now I am in Mima City in Western Tokushima Prefecture, which is on the island of Shikoku in the south of Japan. So very rural, Inaka, Japan. And I have lived here for a total of 5 years. So this next January will be my 6th year, which is so crazy to think about. Yeah. So I am an English teacher. I run my own business teaching after school group lessons to kids in town, and then remote lessons. And I know you because we took Japanese class together. I was about to say we went to the same university.
Way back in the day. We didn't actually. Yeah. I just showed up in your Japanese studies.
You just showed up, yes. And one day you invited me to drink bubble tea to ask me questions about study abroad in Japan.
It was a little bit stalker-esque at that point, but you had already been to Japan, and I was like, she is the holder of all the knowledge.
And it was the start of a beautiful friendship that has now been going on for 10 years. If I had already been to Japan, it was probably 2000.
Yeah, because I turned 21 in Japan. Yeah. Yep. That's terrifying. So yeah, we have known each other a long time. You teach English. You read a lot. You've given me several books. What do you usually read?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I read a lot of different things. Like you could open up my Kindle. As much as I don't want to give Amazon tons of money, there's no English bookstores within maybe like a 100-mile radius of my house, unfortunately. So most of it ends up on my Kindle. And if you looked at it, you would see a ton of different kinds of books. But I would say this past year, I've been really into memoirs and more like creative nonfiction. So I was very happy when I got this homework from you inviting me to participate in the book club.
Yes, and thank you for reading and being here to discuss it. I have my copy. You have your Kindle edition and notes and everything. You're very prepared. As a teacher and friend, I'm impressed.
Yes, I have made my highlights.
So my first question about this book, actually, before we get into the book, for anybody who hasn't read it yet, what is this book about?
This is a murder mystery, and the murder happens right away. It's like
it's very soon.
Page 5. Yeah, very soon. And so it's about, so the main character was living in Chicago, and because of, a couple different life reasons, has returned to their small hometown to help out, and is helping out at the family Filipino restaurant. And so she has very complicated feelings about being home, and then a murder happens at her family's restaurant. And so everyone is suspicious, and traces of arsenic, that's the title, are found on the dishes that the person who died was eating. So it's kind of about her launching her own investigation to clear her family's name. Yeah.
So in that way, I think it very much follows the like cozy mystery tropes of like a random who's not a detective, like not involved with the police in any way, who's like, I'm going to solve this crime. So in some ways, I think
very cozy.
Yes, it is. It definitely is. What did you think overall?
I loved it, and I think part of the reason what makes it so cozy is all the food and beverages like described in such like luxurious detail.
It really was.
Yeah, and so one thing I found was like really interesting was that a lot of it takes place in a Filipino restaurant, but I'm not super familiar with Filipino cuisine, right? Like I've had adobo before, and I can't remember the name, maybe it was in the book, but one of my Filipino friends made like kind of like Japanese mochi, like a sticky like rice cake, but with like coconut on it.
Oh, yum.
I've had whatever that dessert is. It was super good. But that's like the extent of my knowledge pretty much. And so it made me so excited to try some of these dishes, like hopefully someday in the future, while reading about them, and the way that the author describes in such detail, like the spices and the ingredients and like the emotional feel of the dish, I thought was really well done. Yeah,
I completely agree. As I was starting to get into it, and I've read a lot of cozy mysteries, not now, but in high school, I think I was like really into that. And so in the beginning I was kind of like, oh no, it's just like every like trope and cliche piled on top of each other. So I was a bit worried, but definitely like all of the food, all of the like, there was a lot of like genuinely heartwarming, like family content, friendship moments that were just like, oh no, I love these characters. Like, no matter the, like, cliches or things, like, I genuinely loved the main character.
Yeah, and I will say it was kind of, like, cliche or, like, a little corny at times, but that's keeping with, like, the cozy mystery trope. And also, one thing that I thought was kind of new that the book did well was I think almost all of the characters are characters of color. And there are a lot of varying characters on the gender or sexuality like spectrum.
Yeah. A lot of like, inclusivity.
A lot of different identities. And there was like the characters were full characters in their own right. So like a character who was a member of the LGBT community, like that was not their only thing. It was like a part of their identity that was like mentioned.
But they weren't just like, the LGBT character.
Yeah, like they didn't have like their storyline wasn't just like, I need to come out or whatever. Like they had their own storyline along with their identity. So I thought that was really cool.
Well written into the broader story, definitely. Yeah. I also liked, and you kind of mentioned in your summary there, that our main character like moves from Chicago and is kind of like going back home and has a lot of emotions about that. And I felt like she felt like a real person, like a genuinely well-rounded person that I think you and I have both moved enough back and forth that like there are a lot of emotions about going home after you've lived somewhere else and like started a new life or like whatever, and then like backtracked almost. And I could really like feel that connection.
Yeah. Especially like when you're close with your family and you do have friends back home, which I know both of us are in that position. And so I really related to the main character with that regard too, right? Because she has friends back in her hometown
that she genuinely loves,
like her family that she genuinely loves, but still has like complicated feelings about
and, like doesn't want to be
this
there.
Unexpected life path. Yeah, exactly.
So I definitely loved the main character for many reasons, but also just like the whole baking element. Like she was always in her brain like, I could make this, or like I could serve this, and that I really identified with. So I loved her. Did you have another favorite character?
Oh, Maddie. Let me just tell you something real quick, which is that one of my places that I highlighted in the book was when the main character says, I had access to a bathroom, a kitchen where I could bake, and all of the caffeine. What more could I need? And I highlighted it and wrote like, this is Maddie.
It is very accurate. I could just have that framed on my wall.
Other characters that I liked, this is maybe random, but I kind of liked the dentist.
Who? Okay, spoiler alerts from this point on. What did you like about the dentist? Who seems to be a love interest.
And sweet. Yeah, he seems to be a love interest. He's just nice and sweet. And like, I could also, so I identified with this like main character who has all these friends and family, you know, in her hometown. But like the character of Dr. J, like he is a little lonely and he sees his parents and goes to work. Like, he sees his like immediate family and he goes to work and that's it. And I think because you and I have like moved to, you know, different places, well, and just anyone who's like moved or been in a new environment or had their friends move, like I could imagine that life, right? Of like you go to work and you work long hours and then you go home and you maybe see your parents, and that's like,
and especially if you're not a super extroverted person, as you and I are not super extroverted, it's hard to get out of your little bubble of like work home when you're an adult. So
so there's like a scene where like I think it's Adina who invites like the dentist out to dinner with them, and he's like, Dr. J is like, yeah, yay, and he like is so excited and shows up. And at first I felt like, what the heck, like why is this random dentist like coming? And then I like, you know, after thinking about it for a second, was like, oh wait, no, I can imagine though, like small town, there's not a lot of like people that you know. Your life is just work. Like I've been in that position where somebody kind of random invites me to dinner, especially when I first moved here to the random Inaka town where I live. Like someone invites you to dinner,
even just like, to be nice. Yep.
Right. And you're like a potential new friend, like dinner plans. Yes, and so,
I'm coming.
I thought it was really adorable. I thought it was nice.
Yeah. So okay, I was gonna ask you this later on, but since we're talking about Dr. J, one thing that was like really confusing to me throughout this book, and maybe it's because I read it a bit ago, maybe it's because I read it in one sitting, so correct me if I'm wrong with this information. So our main character is like 25. Dr. J is like 30.
I think he's almost 30.
Almost 30. He was about to turn 30 or something. So he's Korean, and he refers to Detective Park as his brother, his older brother. And Detective Park is described in the book as being a silver fox seems into Tita Rosie.
Like salt and pepper hair.
Yep, salt and pepper hair. Was married, is married, has grown children. So I'm over here in my brain like, okay, so we've got the main girl and her love interest that's like 5 years older. Fine. Normal. And then we've got the main character's auntie, who's got to be middle-aged, at least, right?
Right, because she's run this restaurant.
She's been running this restaurant forever. So she's not like
long time.
Like sister auntie. Like
son.
No, she's like full on like her mom's age, like whatever. So like how do these brothers fit in? My parents have big age gaps among their siblings, like my aunts and uncles. So like I know it happens in real life. But also, like, Detective Park has to be minimum 40 years old.
Okay,
right?
So
right.
This is something that I also kind of bothered me about this book is some of the age stuff. And I felt the same way about the descriptions of Derek, the main character's ex-boyfriend. Because at one point she also refers to him as almost 30. And maybe she's rounding up, like, from 27. But she calls him almost 30. But then she talks about dating in high school and how they met, like, I think it was her sophomore year.
Were they a couple years apart?
Like,
but still not 5 years apart.
But it still was weird to me to, like, imagine her calling him almost 30, but then, like, they dated in high school and were just a few years apart. So there were just a couple, like, age things like that where I was like, wait, when did this happen? How old is everyone?
Well, and it was a big enough thing that like I like had to pause and like flip back a few pages, like, did I read too quickly? Did I miss something? Like, I don't know.
So that's also why I thought, like, when the scene where you find out that they're brothers, the scene where they're like, Detective Park walks into the dental clinic and there's like an exchange where he's like, oh, I have to cancel our dinner plans. I got invited to like this other dinner. And I assumed because I thought that they were so different in age from the narrator, I assumed that they were like boyfriends. were like they were involved romantically.
Oh, interesting.
And then later you find out that they're brothers, and it was like a family dinner. And I was like, oh, but
I did not have that hunch. I did not have that hunch at all. That would have been really close. And I think it's because like we meet Detective Park in like early chapter 2, and like from the beginning he gave me the vibe of like middle-aged man into Tita Rosie. And so in my mind, like, I had him there, and I think it's just because of all the, like, usual tropes of a cozy mystery. When our main character meets the dentist, I'm like, oh, he's her love interest. Like, he's, like, in her group, and Detective Park's over here with Tita Rosie.
Yeah.
So I had, like, completely separated them.
Yeah.
In my mind. And then, I don't know, 15-year age gap, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I also... So, one other thing I really liked about this book, on the subject of love interest, is that... This is a major spoiler, again. But her love interest, or, like, her little love triangle, is, like, not resolved in this book. And maybe that's just because it's a series.
Yeah.
But also, I sort of liked that the tension between her best friend and her was resolved. So I think in this book, like, friendship kind of took priority over, like, the love angle of it. And I appreciated that. Like, the relationship between her and her best friend was, like, the central relationship to the story.
And I think that really went a long way in making the character seem relatable. And, like, you know me, I read a lot of romance novels. And even though I, like, will never stop doing that, I hate it when the ending is, like, they're fighting, and the next minute it's like, will you marry me? Like, like, we've been dating for 3 days, but, like, let's get married. Like, it's just like, what? Why? I don't know why that has to be a trope in every romance novel. But I love that in this book, it was like, the slow burn on the love interest and the friendship, like had ups and downs. It wasn't just like, yep, we're best friends and we always have been, like, and we always will be. Like, friends also have moments of disagreeing and communicating again and wanting different things and going in different directions. And yeah, I like that they did wrap up some of those loose ends.
That feels more realistic to me, right? Like, she's like always had a crush on her friend's brother, but also there's this cute dentist. So like also there's like a couple cute guys, there's a couple love interests, and like nothing has quite happened yet.
Nothing is serious,
but maybe
but
in
like,
the future.
Yeah.
Like, that felt very like realistic to me, and kind of like how life is.
Yeah. So speaking of all of these characters and the storylines that you liked or didn't like, what did you think about the actual, like, murder mystery itself?
Okay, so actually, I liked the murder mystery.
Yeah.
One thing that frustrated me is that, so Detective Park seems to have it out for their family for some reason. Like, he's kind of in love with the aunt, but then, like, thinks that the protagonist, like, did everything's her fault. And there was, like, a time where she had a solid alibi. It's when she's at the sushi restaurant.
Yes.
Eating this, like, amazing, like, Japanese course meal. And the detective later is like, I know you. I'm not sure what to say for spoilers or whatever. But the detective accuses her of doing something that is, like, she had a clear alibi. And I felt some frustration with the main character because her internal monologue is like, I didn't do it, but I knew he wouldn't believe me. What should I do? I don't know. She's like very frustrated. And I'm just like, but
he would believe you.
Like, tell him to go talk to the sushi people that you like had a conversation with in the restaurant. And so that was like really frustrating to me.
Wasn't there something wrapped up? Because the sushi restaurant also had this side like weird thing where they were kind of maybe trying like a red herring situation. But wasn't that something about like the wife or the woman in the couple, or like she couldn't rely on them to be an alibi, so because she didn't want to tell anyone, or she wasn't supposed to be there? I don't know. There was something fishy.
It got a little, it got a little convoluted at times. So I appreciated it, and I was like invested in like, oh my god, who did it? Yeah, right. Yeah. Should I not say any spoilers?
I think at this point, spoilers, it's fine. If you don't want to know, please leave. Yeah.
Okay. So I did figure out who did it, like a couple pages before we figured it out.
But not like early on. Like
not early on.
It took a while.
I think that was well done. Like, once you find out who did it. Yeah. There are enough clues along the way that you're like, oh I totally
for sure.
Yeah, and I also felt like it was realistic in that. So there's actually another spoiler. So there's 2 murders in this book, but the same culprit, like the same person, did not do them both. And so I thought that was interesting too. It's not like one villain. It's like a more complicated story with like a lot of different people and a lot of different agendas. And I thought that was interesting to read.
Yeah, I really liked that even though it was kind of silly and a lot of the like, random girl goes questioning people like undercover, a lot of it was like very like charming and not very serious. But at the same time, I genuinely like did not know for a while who did it. I had a lot of people who I thought like legitimately could have had the agenda to have killed him. So I did like how that was structured overall.
I have one issue. Yeah. So my issue is that you ultimately find out that Kevin, the owner of the cafe, is the one who killed Derek, right? To get revenge for his sister, because his sister was struggling with addiction and Derek was supplying her with drugs, basically. Right? Even though Derek had officially flipped and was like working with the police to like take down the drug syndicate ring.
That got a bit murky, but yes.
Yeah. But so that's why that was Kevin's motive for killing Derek, right? To get back for his sister. But then you find out that Mrs. Long is the one who killed Mr. Long because she thinks he killed her son, or he was planning on killing her son. It's just someone else. Kevin got to it first, right?
Right.
So she finds that out, and so she kills him. And then there's a moment at the end where everyone kind of knows that she did it, and she admits to it, like when she says goodbye.
Yeah.
And she leaves
And she just
to, like,
leaves.
move out of town.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the tone of the book is very like, everyone knows, but it's okay. Like, it's the man who was, you know, trying to kill her son. Like, of course, like, the real justice is letting her, like,
yes.
do that. But in my head, I was like, why is that justice okay? But then, like, Kevin loves his sister and is trying to get revenge for her. Like, why is that? I don't know. Like, did you have thoughts about like those two?
I did
motives?
have some questions about that. And on one hand, it was kind of like, I get where they're coming from, especially if they're insinuating like this was at least like an emotionally abusive relationship, or like something was not right here. The relationship was not a good one. The family dynamic was very dysfunctional. Yes, Mr. Long was attempting to do harm to the child, like, I mean, not child, adult, but like the son.
But her child.
Her child. So like, it is very complicated, and you can see like why she reacted the way she did, and it did seem like what she did was in the heat of the moment, right? Because she just like stabs him, right? It wasn't like a like planned out murder. It was like,
she like,
I need to stop you,
and then stabs him. Yeah.
So that also is harder, because it's like, even knowing like basically nothing about the criminal justice system, and it's not like things go well here in America, but it's like, okay, she has enough behind her that I feel like a good lawyer could get her a relatively minimal sentence for that.
It just felt strange to me to being like I can totally get, you know, why she stabs Mr. Long, right? Her husband. It's like he was trying to kill her son. But then, like, I also felt some empathy for Kevin. Like, he's heartbroken that his sister.
You also had like family connection. He had like an emotional doing it for misguided but understandable reasons.
But
I don't know.
I guess what makes them different is that Kevin sort of gets maniacal and starts trying to kill other people to cover it up. I guess that's where we're supposed to. He did
kind of go a little bit crazy. But, and I mean, also if you kind of think about it more too, he did think about it more. Like, it was like a thoroughly planned murder.
Yeah.
But that it was a little bit strange that like everybody was just like, yep, she did it. Like, she did that, and we know, and she, I don't know, has hurt enough. Yeah, it's a little bit strange. So, as we mentioned, like, there are some things that are tied up. The murder is solved, but this is the first of, I think, 3 books in the series so far. I don't know if she's writing more. I would assume yes, but I don't know. Are you going to keep reading the series?
So, I think I will keep reading. This book is like a very specific trope. It's very cozy. It's like a little bit corny at times. I think that it's a certain mood. Like, do you have books like that where you're like, I'm about to get on a long airplane ride, or like I'm going to stay in and like take naps and read all, you know, this Sunday? I think that's like the perfect kind of mood for me to read the next book.
Yeah, I completely agree. I did order the second book now that I'm back in Minnesota. So yes, I can give it to you when I see you in Minnesota or in Japan. But yeah, I also decided I'm going to keep reading it. Like you said, it is like cheesy and corny, but also in like a very nice way. Not all the time. Like, if I only read books like this, I would go crazy. Like, I couldn't do it all the time. But
it's like a treat. It's like frosting. It's like whipped cream or something, right? It's like a little bit, it's like a treat.
It's good. It's good every once in a while.
But this book made me like constantly want to drink coffee, because in addition to the amazing, all the Filipino cooking dishes in this book, they hang out at this coffee shop, and like the characters are always drinking coffee. And if I was reading this book in the morning, I would literally put it down and like go make myself a cup of coffee. And if it was like too late in the day for me to like consume caffeine still, I would be like frustrated, like, oh my gosh, I want to drink like what she's having, but like I can't right now.
So speaking of that, for this book club project, I made a macaron inspired by the Pandan Coconut thumbprint cookies she made. Because I just love that they had all these people at her house, and she was like, oh no, I don't have time to make something fancy, but I'll still whip up these cookies. It was like, yep, that's me. That's me. But I also decided to make the drink she keeps talking about, the like Calamansi Iced Tea. And it was amazing. Highly recommend.
Calamansi.
It's in the citrus family, so it's vaguely like lemon, orange adjacent, kind of yuzu, all those vibes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mixed it with like black tea and ginger and honey, and it was incredible. Highly recommend.
That sounds so good.
Please make it. Last question. How would you rate this book, and on what scale?
That is a hard question.
So it's a hard question. One reason I really want to ask people this is because I'm on Goodreads relatively recently, and on Goodreads there's 5 stars for a rating, but it's kind of like 1 star is like I hated it, 2 stars is like it's okay, 3 is it's like good, I liked it, 4 loved it, 5 it was incredible. And I like, so most people give things, and I seem to like always give things 3 stars because I'm like, I don't know, like unless it was life-changing, I feel a lot of pressure and like Goodreads, like star anxiety. So for me on a Goodreads scale, I think I would give this a 3, but I think generally, and especially like going back, rereading bits so I could do my like baking adventure and like to talk with you, I think I would give it a 4 out of 5 stars generally.
I think I would give it a 3 or a 3.5. I'm going to say 3. Oh no, I have anxiety now. I think I would give it a 3, and here's why. I think that the book was really good and the mystery was good. But I think I personally would have to be in a certain mood to read it, right? Like that cozy, like I want to read something kind of corny. It's like how you would watch like a rom-com or something, right? Like you want to be in a certain mood, which is why I think I wouldn't give it a 4 or a 5.
Yeah.
But it was a good book. So I'm going to give it a 3.
Makes sense. Any last comments or things you want to say?
I loved all the family in this book and how extensive the definition of family was, right? Like her best friends and like family friends. Like she's always talking about like her godmothers and there are so many like cousins, and just as someone with like a big family who has like a million cousins that are actually like second cousins or third cousins or not even cousins, just somebody's like their family friends' kids. Yeah. I just really identified with that, and I loved seeing all the different types of family in this book.
Yeah, I think that is one thing that makes me want to read the next books is like, especially when you have like a cozy mystery or like a small town anything, there's only so much of a character pool to pull from. So I feel like the like close-knit relationships and family dynamics will only strengthen as the series goes on. So I'm kind of curious to see like where all of these connections go. Yeah.
And I love that small town vibe. And like as someone who now lives in a very small town, I like totally get it. Like, oh, she's locked up in the local jail, and the person who did it is like one of her cousins, right? Like one of the family friends, and like this restaurant owner is also a family friend, and I love the
everybody knows everybody.
Like, everybody knows everybody.
Gossip everywhere.
Yes, exactly. It's like not that hard to get people talking to you. You swing by the restaurant, ask them some questions, and so that I really enjoyed that because that's my life. Just having worked as a teacher in the public schools here and also being married to a public school teacher here, it's like I feel like that just makes it like so much smaller too, because
you literally know all the kids.
Kids and parents, and or you've like worked with someone in the past at a different school. So yeah.
Nice.
Someday if I'm accused of attempted murder and locked in a jail cell overnight,
well, we'll know what to do. Just go to every restaurant and start asking questions. Well, Amber, thank you for being here with me today and for arranging your schedule and time so this could work. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Anytime you want to talk books, I'm down.
Always, basically. All right. Thank you for joining. I will talk with you later. Thank you, Amber. Okay. Bye.
Yeah, bye, Maddie.